The kitchen clock ticked louder than usual, each second reminding me of the bill taped to the refrigerator. The rent was past due again. I had rehearsed excuses all morning, but now that the knock at the door echoed through the hallway, my throat felt dry. When I opened it, he was there, my landlord. Tall, dark-skinned, shoulders filling the doorway, a presence that made me feel small and unprepared. He didn't bother with greetings. His eyes scanned me briefly, then dropped to the stack of unopened mail on the side table. He already knew why I hadn't answered his calls. "Rent was due last week," he said flatly, voice steady, but not harsh. "I can't keep giving extensions." Heat rose to my cheeks. I tried to hold his gaze, but shame forced my eyes to the floor. My husband should have been the one standing here, explaining, taking responsibility. But he was at work, always at work, and the weight of our household debts had settled squarely on my shoulders. "I just need a little more time," I whispered. "He's waiting on his paycheck. We'll get it to you, I promise." The landlord leaned against the doorframe, folding his arms. He didn't look angry, just thoughtful, like he was calculating something in silence. The pause stretched longer than I expected, and with every second, I felt more exposed. "You've been promising that for 3 months," he said at last. "I'm patient, but patience doesn't keep the lights on." A cold dread pressed against my chest. Eviction wasn't just a threat, it was a possibility. Where would we go? How would we explain it to family? The shame would be unbearable. I wanted to close the door and hide, but his presence held me there. There was something unsettling in the way his eyes lingered. Not cruel, not soft, but assessing, as if he was looking past my excuses and into the part of me that wanted to be believed. Then his tone shifted, quieter, lower. "Maybe there's another way we can work something out." The words startled me. My breath caught, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if I'd heard him right. My pulse quickened, the room suddenly warmer. "What do you mean?" I asked carefully. His lips curved into the faintest suggestion of a smile, though his expression stayed unreadable. "You know what I mean," he said, almost casually, as though it required no further explanation. My stomach tightened. Shame, curiosity, fear, they all collided at once. I should have slammed the door, demanded respect, called my husband. Instead, I stood frozen, the air thick between us, the offer unspoken but undeniable. I felt the floor shift beneath me, as if life had split into 2 paths, one where I held on to the fragile integrity I still claimed, and one where I gave into the temptation whispering beneath his words. His voice broke the silence, calm and steady. "Think about it." And then he turned, leaving me with the echo of his footsteps and a choice I wasn't ready to admit I might consider. That night, I lay awake beside my husband, staring at the ceiling as his soft snores filled the room. His body was close, yet he felt so far away, buried in exhaustion and silence. I wanted to shake him, to tell him how desperate I felt, how close we were to losing everything. But I knew his response already, another promise about tomorrow, another plan that never seemed to arrive. The landlord's words echoed in my head. "Maybe there's another way." They repeated like a song I couldn't turn off, threading themselves into every anxious thought until sleep was impossible. I hated myself for even entertaining it, yet a dangerous part of me wondered if surrendering would really be so unthinkable. The next afternoon, I found myself standing at the window, watching for his car. I told myself it was coincidence, that I was waiting only to clarify the rent situation. But when he finally appeared, walking with that unshakable calm, I knew deep down I had invited this moment. He didn't bother with formalities when I opened the door. Instead, his eyes held mine, steady and knowing, as though he could already read the answer I hadn't spoken. "Have you thought about what I said?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "I don't know what you mean." He stepped closer, and suddenly the hallway felt too small, my own home no longer my own. His voice dropped lower, intimate but firm. "Don't play with me. You know exactly what I mean." I should have pushed him back, should have ended it right there. But the truth is, I didn't. The anger I wanted to feel toward him twisted instead into something else, an unsettling mix of fear and curiosity. He represented power, control, a solution, however wrong it might be. My lips parted, searching for an excuse, but no words came. He seemed to notice the hesitation, the weakness in my silence. His hand brushed lightly against mine, testing deliberate. My chest tightened, yet I didn't pull away. In that suspended moment, guilt and desire collided. I thought of my husband, the vows we made, the life we had built. But then I thought of eviction, of moving boxes, of neighbors whispering about our failures. And beneath it all pulsed a secret truth I couldn't ignore. I wanted to feel wanted again. "Tell me to stop," he said softly, almost daring me. But I didn't. The next moments blurred. My decisions carried forward on a current I no longer resisted. My body betrayed me, answering impulses I had sworn I didn't have. Every second deepened the betrayal, yet every second also stripped away the fear of what came next. By the time I realized the line had been crossed, it was far too late. I had stepped into something I couldn't erase, something I couldn't confess. And when it was over, when silence settled around us like a heavy curtain, I understood with chilling clarity. The rent was no longer a debt paid in money. It was a secret I now owed, one I would have to carry alone. Morning light spilled across the room, unforgiving in its clarity. I sat at the edge of the bed, my hands trembling as I clutched a coffee mug I hadn't touched. My husband shuffled into the kitchen behind me, yawning, scratching at his jaw, asking absently if I had paid the electricity bill. His voice was ordinary, unchanged, unaware. And that, more than anything, twisted the guilt deeper into my chest. I answered too quickly, too brightly. "I'll take care of it today." He didn't notice. He rarely noticed much anymore. He kissed the top of my head before leaving for work, the gesture mechanical, rehearsed, like someone signing their name out of habit rather than intention. I smiled as he walked out, but the moment the door closed, my smile collapsed. The landlord's presence lingered in every corner of the apartment. I could still feel his touch, still hear his voice whispering tell me to stop. But I hadn't, and now I carried a truth I could never share. The day stretched endlessly, every sound heightened. A knock at the door made my pulse spike. A phone vibration sent me scrambling, afraid it might be him, afraid it might be anyone. Even silence was heavy, filled with the echo of what I had done. When my husband called during lunch, his voice was casual, updating me about his shift, complaining about his boss. I tried to respond normally, but each word cracked beneath the weight of what I wasn't saying. My throat tightened when he mentioned the landlord in passing, something about dropping off a maintenance request later that week. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached, nodding into the receiver though he couldn't see. I told myself I should feel disgust, and part of me did. But buried within the guilt was another feeling, one I didn't dare name aloud. It was a rush, a secret thrill, the knowledge that for once someone had looked at me, not through me, not past me, but at me. That dangerous sense of being wanted again. The duality tormented me. I loved my husband, or at least I thought I did, but resentment had taken root in the cracks of our marriage. He worked late, came home tired, left me with bills and empty promises. The landlord, in contrast, had demanded nothing but presence, and I had given it freely. That evening, when my husband returned, I cooked dinner, laughed at his jokes, and played the role of the faithful wife. But the mask was fragile, and behind it, my thoughts were wild, disloyal, unsteady. As we sat across from each other at the table, he spoke casually of meeting with the landlord over the weekend to discuss some repairs. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I forced a smile, but inside, panic clawed at me. Because in that moment, I realized the secret I thought I could bury was already threatening to rise. The weekend arrived faster than I wanted. Each passing day had been a blur of forced smiles and rehearsed normalcy, but the knowledge of what awaited gnawed at me like an open wound. My husband was cheerful that morning, coffee in hand, humming off-key as though nothing in the world could disturb him. I envied his ignorance. The knock came promptly, heavy and deliberate. My chest tightened as my husband rose from his chair, muttering, "That'll be him." When the door opened, the landlord stood framed in the sunlight, casual but commanding. His eyes flicked over me once, a glance so brief my husband didn't notice, but I did. It said everything. It was a reminder, a quiet grip on the secret binding us. "Come in," my husband said warmly, oblivious. "We'll talk at the table." I busied myself with dishes, though my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped a glass. From the kitchen, I could hear their voices, the mundane back and forth about rent agreements, repairs, and future payments. Ordinary words, but each syllable carried a hidden weight for me. At one point, I risked a glance. The landlord sat relaxed, arm draped across the back of the chair, his posture unconcerned. But his gaze found mine again, steady, unyielding. It wasn't a threat exactly, nor a kindness. It was a reminder of the power he now held. I felt myself unraveling under the tension. Every laugh my husband gave, every casual nod, felt like betrayal in reverse. He trusted both of us, without question. He didn't see the cracks widening beneath his own roof. "Appreciate your patience," my husband was saying. "We'll be caught up soon." The landlord's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "I'm sure we'll work something out," he replied. His words were coded in double meaning, and though my husband only heard reassurance, I heard the echo of that first conversation at the doorway. I excused myself to the bathroom, locking the door as I pressed trembling hands against the sink. In the mirror, I saw a stranger staring back, eyes wide, face pale, lips tight with fear. This was not who I had been, yet it was who I had become. When I returned, the conversation was ending. My husband shook the landlord's hand firmly, thanking him again. The landlord's eyes lingered on me one last time, calm and knowing, before he stepped out into the sunlight. The door clicked shut. My husband smiled at me, relief softening his features.
"See?
"Everything's fine," he said. He pulled me into an embrace, and I forced myself to melt into it, though inside I was hollow. Because I knew nothing was fine. The rent had been handled, the conversation had ended, but the cost remained. It lived in my body, in my silence, in the unspoken bond that tethered me to a man who was not my husband. And as I held on, smiling through the ache, a single thought burned cold and clear. The rent was paid, but the debt would never truly be settled.